Drew, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Tristan. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm stoked to have you on, played against you in high school, and then watched your entire career, your time at Nebraska, now in the Braves organization. And back to your time in high school, you were Gatorade Player of the Year in Nebraska, the top recruit in the state of Nebraska. There can be a lot of pressure that comes along with that and handling all of that. Did that pressure ever get to you, and how did you handle having such a high status?
Yeah, I think for me, when I was in high school, I really never felt that sort of pressure from the outside. I think, I played three sports and was kind of always just, on to the next season, on to the next sport, kind of what's the task in front of me right now. And so I really don't think it was until, I graduated high school and got on campus in the summer bridge program at Nebraska where I kind of felt that pressure kind of hit me all at once and like, okay, these are kind of some of the expectations that I have on me from the outside. And then more so than that, just kind of what I was expecting from myself, to go in as a freshman and contribute right away. Being, an athlete in high school, as it is for most guys who play sports in college, you're used to contributing on the field pretty much at every moment of the game and every season that you play in. And so I kind of thought, this is going to be no different. We're just going to go in and we got to find a way to contribute right away on the field. And it didn't really happen for me, and it didn't really happen for quite a while actually on the field at Nebraska. And so there was definitely an adjustment period that I had to make both on and off the field on kind of like, okay, maybe if I'm not playing and contributing to my team while I'm on the mound, how can I do that in the dugout? How can I do that in the locker room? And that was a process for me that allowed me to, when I was able to step on the field and make that impact between the lines, it was able to have, I think, more of an impact just because of the foundation that I had laid off the field when I maybe wasn't playing as much.
Yeah, I think one of the struggles of being a multi-sport athlete in high school, like both of us were, is you show up to college and then you're just a baseball player. And for so long in each sport that you played, especially with your caliber, is you were kind of the big fish in a small pond, always one of the best guys on the field, no matter what sport it was. And then you end up at Nebraska where you're a freshman and you're playing just one sport, and there's so many things that are just changing. How did you end up at Nebraska? And then what were some of those kind of growing pains of freshman year?
Yeah, so my collegiate recruiting journey was really fun, and it was exciting. It took me a lot of different places across the country on official visits. Um, I originally thought I was going to be playing football in college after my first couple seasons of high school sports, but it really wasn't until my junior year where baseball kind of presented itself as my future. And so once that kind of made itself known, I really wanted to narrow down, where I wanted to go take my official visits, and I ended up going to some really cool spots. Took a visit to Duke and Kansas State and Stanford, and then obviously Nebraska. Those ended up being my final four schools, and along with Virginia as well, my final five. And so, kind of when I was evaluating all those programs, what it came down to for me ultimately, I think, was just if I wasn't playing baseball, would I be happy at this school? And for me, the answer to that was yes for Nebraska for a lot of different reasons. One, just being the proximity to home. Family is a huge thing for me, and it still is to this day. Like, I wanted to be around my family, having them being able to come to almost every single game, if not all of them, throughout my entire career. Only being a 15-minute drive away was a really huge thing for me throughout the entirety of my college career. So that was a big thing for me. But then also just like growing up and being a Husker fan, like to this day, I think I was a massive Husker fan while I was playing for the Huskers, right? Every sport, basketball, baseball, football, volleyball, women's soccer, like all these things that I had grown up loving to watch, I was now immersed in as an athlete. And I think that was just one of the big factors for me that, like, I grew up idolizing the end, and now I can wear it. Like, that's a no-brainer for me.
When I showed up at Fullerton, I had no clue what was going on. You go from having so much success at the high school level to you step on campus, and there's part of you that feels like you go in there and you say, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to contribute right away. And for a lot of people, that's just not how it works. And there's a lot of times that you struggle from the get go. I remember my first inter squad at Fullerton was against Tanner Bybee, who's now pitching for the Cleveland Guardians.
Yeah.
And he struck me out twice on 6 pitches. So it was good morning, good afternoon, good night. And I get back to the dugout after that second at bat, and I was like, am I just not cut out for this? And then everyone was like, hey, relax. He's the best guy on our roster. I get a hit off of one of our relievers in my last at bat. I'm like, all right, like I can handle it here. But there were still a lot of things that were tough. Were there some instances like that for yourself during your time at Nebraska, especially as a freshman in the fall?
Yeah, most definitely. I can remember my first inter squad at bat pretty vividly, actually, as a freshman. So I get up on the mound, feeling pretty good. Like you said, you're used to doing well on the baseball field. Leighton Banjoff steps in, and Leighton for Nebraska during that COVID season, it was his freshman year, and he was like an All American freshman team, had an unbelievable season. And I can't remember if he was a junior or sophomore at this time. I think a junior. But Leighton steps into the box, and I go, first 2 pitches, fastballs, by him. I got him 0-2. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I say, oh, this is kind of like high school again. Shake the catcher off for an off-speed pitch because I'm thinking, oh, I'm feeling pretty good with the fastball. And Leighton parks that third 0-2 pitch right in the trees at dead center at Haymarket. And, kind of as he's going around the bases, he's let me know that, like, welcome to college baseball. So that's always one of the moments that I look back on in my first, kind of welcome to college moment. And I think, there's a lot of times that you experience that in different ways throughout your first year as a collegiate athlete. Like you said, it's not an uncommon thing for that to happen to you, whether you're a hitter or pitcher, whether you're playing football, basketball, whatever it is. Kind of that imposter syndrome hits you. And I think that's not a new feeling for anybody who's gone through for any type of sport. But I think what you really learn about yourself after that is, like you said, you figure out pretty quickly that, yes, you do belong and you have what it takes to be here. It's just about going about finding your role and how you're going to contribute to the team that you're on in whatever variety that they ask of you.
You faced some ups and downs throughout your college career, like many athletes did. Where do you feel like you grew the most from your time stepping on campus as a freshman to the time you were a senior? And what were those struggles and how'd you get through a lot of them?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I think about the struggles that I had for myself personally on the field, I really just think kind of to the first 2 years of my career there. Obviously, as a freshman, didn't really play hardly at all. Couldn't really contribute on the field. And then as a sophomore, got in sparingly. I think finished the year with just under 20 innings, but not nearly enough that I was looking for. And that was on a really talented team. We had Max Anderson and Bryce Matthews go in the first 2 rounds of the draft that year. 2 other of our starting pitchers, our Friday and Saturday night guys, get drafted. And that team was very talented and missed out on the regional, and really due to kind of lack of consistent pitching depth. And I think, looking internally at myself, I was like, I think that could have been something that I could have provided to the team that year that I just, wasn't up to the task. And so really, I think the biggest period of growth for me was after that sophomore season. I was lucky enough to go up to Alaska to play collegiate summer ball. And I think summer ball is such a great experience for a lot of guys as they go throughout their baseball journey. You get to learn a lot about yourself, meet new teammates, kind of remove yourself from the uber competitive environment of the collegiate spring season and kind of go fall in love with baseball again in the summer in some really cool places. And for me, Alaska obviously was an unreal experience aside from the baseball, but up there, physically I was removed from everything really. And so it kind of just allowed me space to figure out what I wanted from baseball. I think I was coming into those first 2 seasons just stressing really hard on field success, and trying to push what I could do, to evolve and become a better pitcher, and basically just try and think more and more and more as I was better. And up there, I kind of realized that at some points you do have to just kind of ease your foot off the gas, trust the work that you're doing, and just see where that takes you. And I came back after that summer in Alaska, just a lot more confidence and relaxed, I would say, mentality going into my junior year, which allowed me to pitch the most I had up until that point in my career, take on a lot of different roles, contribute in a lot of different ways to a team that over the next 2 years had a lot of success and won 2 championships.
One thing I really struggled with was the almost idea that every single at bat was life or death. I would go up there, I'd be thinking to myself, if I strike out here, what are the coaches going to think? What are my teammates going to think? I'm not going to be thinking very positively about myself. And then that would lead to the next at bat. And you kind of touched on in your time in summer ball is you almost take that pressure off a little bit. How do you not let every single outing or every single pitch just consume you? And like you said, just trust the work that you've put in.
Yeah, I think living in the present moment is a huge thing, especially as a baseball player. I think that's one of the advantages of almost every other sport. When you're on the football field or the basketball court, there's no time to analyze, the pass you just dropped or the block you just missed or the layup you just, missed over the backboard or off the glass or anything like that. You have to go right up back on to defense or you got a guy coming to block you in the mouth on the next play. There's no time to kind of sit in your own thoughts. And with baseball, the complete opposite is true. You go up as a hitter, you might not be up for another 45 minutes. Your next at bat, you're on the mound as a pitcher. There's some times when you're going, as a starter, you're going 7 days in between starts if you're in college or in high school, and so there's a lot of time to just kind of fester and really sit with your own thoughts. Which, human nature, they tend to be pretty hard, especially in a sport like baseball. So I think for me, just really having the mentality of like moving pitch to pitch. As a reliever, I'm pitching multiple times a week now. And what I did in my last few years of college, like you can't be so judgmental about each outing because you're going to be up on the mound relatively soon again, to help your team in a different way. And it doesn't matter if you were great last time or if you were awful last time. Each moment and each pitch is its own, and it's up to you to do whatever. So I think freeing yourself up and not really judging the results, what happened, good or bad, allows me on the mound to just kind of compete. And I think that's ultimately the thing that drives the best results is when you don't have anything tied down to you result wise, and you're just going out there competing.
Today's episode is brought to you by Relight Hydration, my go-to for staying fueled and refreshed. As a former athlete, I know how important it is to stay hydrated. And Relight makes it simple with clean ingredients and essential electrolytes. My two favorite flavors, lemon lime for that crisp, classic kick, and mixed berry when I want something a little sweeter. Whether it's before a workout, during a long day, or after training, Relight keeps me going. You can try it yourself and get 15% off with my code Athletes Mindset at checkout. That's Athletes Mindset for 15% off at Relight. Stay sharp, stay hydrated. I feel like that makes it so much easier to not let it consume you off the field either. You can leave the field and say, all right, I have other things that are going well for me. And I know that I'm going to continue to put this work in. And maybe I just had one bad day. If I keep dwelling on this, it's going to lead to another. But if I can kind of just flush that, you almost have to care, but you can't. Is you have it in your mind of, I'm upset that that didn't go well, but there's nothing I can do about it now. Before we get into your time in pro ball, you were one of those guys at Nebraska that a lot of people could look up to as a leader and a guy that's, started there as a freshman, got there stayed there until you were a senior, and someone that's had the ebbs and flows, but also was a very, a vocal guy that could really help the younger guys out. What do you think makes a good leader?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that go into making a good leader. And when I think of the things that, I really respected guys before me, when I think back to my first couple of years, guys like Shea Shanneman, guys like Kyle Perry, who, really I felt led me in a positive direction. And then when it came my turn to be an upperclassman, it was like, okay, these are the things that I love to get from these guys, and I think impacted me positively. And I think the number one thing is to just be a friend and care, like especially outside of the sport. If you can connect genuinely with somebody outside of the locker room or outside of the field, it makes so much more of a difference when you go to this person with advice about baseball or with advice about their mentality or attitude or anything like that. If they trust you as a friend beyond the sport, then they're going to trust you as an athlete and as a teammate. And so I just really tried to do that. Really tried to get to know all my teammates. And there's a big emphasis on that at Nebraska, as I'm sure is a lot of places, a lot of colleges, to like spend time with your teammates and hang out with the guys when you're not required to on your own, in your own apartments, in your own houses, and have meals together and talk about things other than baseball. And really, looking back, and I'm sure you can say the same, like the teammates that you meet in college and in high school, and while you're playing competitive sports and you're sharing these times, they're some of your best friends for the rest of your life. And so I think it's really important to just make those connections and be genuine about them, and not always try and be like, oh, I want to establish this leadership role, so I'm going to act a certain way on the field because the coaches would like it. I think when it comes down to it, just being genuine and trying to connect with guys on multiple levels is what really inspires people to be led and want to be led by people.
I think it's one of those things that you can practice. You can, practice being a leader and being there for other people, but it's something that can't be forced. Is you can't go out of your way, like you said, just to, maybe be a little eye wash to the coaches or, get on guys in front of the coaches so they think that you're a leader. It's something that you have to go out of your way to do, not only on the field, but also off the field. And I mean, you probably feel the same way. Is the best memories I have of playing college baseball. Yeah, there's some times that were on the field and I had a big hit or whatever it may be, but the most fun times are the ones that were off the field. I know after Sunday series win and you guys are all hanging out or anything like that. And now going into professional baseball where there's still the team aspect, definitely, but you aren't so structured. Is kind of what I've heard from some other athletes. Is it's not you have weights at this time and then you have everyone stretch at this time and everyone throws at this time. It's a lot more on your own. How has that transition been where it's maybe a little less team structured and now a lot of the pressure is onto you to be the best you can be?
Yeah, I would say that description is pretty much accurate. They have a rough outline of what the day is going to look like just from a team perspective, but really within that outline, it's up to you to get your work done that you think you need or you want to do, whether that's in the weight room or doing catch. It's kind of up to you to figure out what you want to do, when you want to do it, and how much you want to put into it. And it's funny to see, the spectrum that a lot of guys need to be successful. There's some guys in the locker room who are putting in 2 hours of work before and after catch play, and that's really what they need every single day to put themselves in the right spot to compete. Um, for me, I'm not one of those guys. I know that, like we said earlier, if I'm pushing the gas too hard, sometimes that's going to cause the wheels to spin in my head a little too much. And so I know some days it's good to do a little more, and some days it's good to do a little bit less. But that's really for each guy to determine. And I think that's one of the nice things about pro baseball is that you're grown up now, you're professional, and they trust you to kind of figure out how to best do that going forward. And that's not to say it's without guardrails, right? There's a lot of people who have jobs specifically to make you the best baseball player that you can be, and a lot of people have a lot of money invested them to make sure that they are that high level player. So there's obviously a lot of people here who are putting in the time and resources into you, which is really nice because if you have any questions or you want any suggestions, there's people to go to and resources for that, which is a huge advantage of being a professional athlete.
I want to backtrack just a little bit to you end up your time at the University of Nebraska and you end up signing with the Atlanta Braves organization. What was that process like and how did you get into that organization?
Yeah, I think I got a really cool perspective on the MLB draft just because at different stages in my career I was able to go through kind of just a lot of different ways and approach it in different ways. And in high school, my senior year, being a more high level prospect, going through kind of how that process looks, and then ultimately just kind of deciding to go to Nebraska. And then as a junior, having opportunities to sign, but ultimately deciding to go back to school for the last year, again for a variety of different reasons. And then having the opportunity as a senior to sign as an undrafted free agent. And even that process was kind of atypical. My deal didn't come until about 2 weeks after the draft, which typically most of the undrafted free agents are signed within the day the draft ends or in the following week. Usually beyond that, there's not much action. And so I remember kind of thinking after, about 10 days after the draft, like, all right, that might be it for the career. Kind of had stopped talking with my agent, hadn't heard any noise. Actually ended up submitting my application to medical school, and just kind of going down a different path. And then I remember my agent called me up and he said, hey, like, I just think that a lot of teams think that you aren't really interested in playing anymore. They know that you want to go to medical school. And so I think if you just go to independent ball for the month of August, like teams will like that and respect that and maybe give you a chance. So I said, you know what? I'm not doing anything for the month of August. Maybe I'll go and end my career on a high note playing and I know it's my last month, so I'll go ahead and do it. And so, in the next 2 days, fly out to the Evansville Otters. My first day that I get there, I get picked up from the airport, taken to the field, put on the uniform, my bag's still at the field. Come in from afterwards of the game, and I have over 20 missed calls, half from my agent, half from my pitching coach, Rob Childress. And I'm kind of like, what's going on? Get on the phone with my agent. He said, I was right. Once I sent out an email that you were going to playing indie ball for the month, and once a couple teams heard about that, we had some offers, and the Braves want to sign you. And I was like, awesome, that's amazing. And Coach Childress called me. He's like, hopefully that you didn't sign anything official with Evansville. And I was like, no, they told me they're going to activate me tomorrow. And so the next day I showed up and went back to the airport. So my stint in indie ball was about one day, and so it was a unique story, especially coming in one day, meeting the guys, and then leaving the next day. But it all worked out, in ways that I couldn't have imagined. When I was a high schooler or a freshman in college, to be at this point right here. But truly, once you get into the system, it's just you're just like everybody else. You're going out there with the same jersey and the same opportunity to compete and get guys out and prove yourself. And that's really all anybody can ask for. So, really grateful that I was able to have that opportunity.
What was that conversation like in Evansville where you show up the following day, or maybe it was after the game, the day that you showed up there, and you just say, "Hey, I'm actually leaving. I just got signed by the
Yeah.
Braves." What was that conversation like?
It was pretty funny. I had multiple people come up and tell me, I think you have the shortest stint ever as an Evansville Otter. And I was like, yeah, that's probably right. And I remember the following day, I went to the field just to get catch play in before I got on the plane to head down to draft camp. And the pitching coach both introduced me to the remainder of the staff and told them at the same time that I was getting signed. So it was pretty funny. I think it makes for a great story. But I think that just shows you that truly, if you keep wanting to play, people are going to find you, and there's going to be an opportunity. I know, one of my really good buddies, Jax Brockett, who's been on here before, like
Yep.
very
Friend of the
similar
show.
story. Yeah, very similar story. Like, didn't get the chance first time through for whatever reason. Decided he wanted to commit to it and give it one last effort, gets a deal, and now he's just absolutely taking off, and it really looks like, Jax is just going to just keep on dominating, and I'm sure he will. And so that's just kind of the power that you can have if you just keep on moving forward.
Yeah, it feels like you guys have very similar stories, also both from Elkhorn, interesting enough, but guys that just had this idea that that deep down in there is you can compete at the highest level possible. And there might be people that say, I can't do this, or, this is going to be a struggle. I don't know if I want to put in all of this work for it. And there's a lot of uncertainty, like you went through, waiting 2 weeks to figure out, what's going to happen for my career. And it so far has worked out, and you have adjusted to pro ball and have continuously gotten better. It seems like each and every outing. Is there a certain level of gratitude that you could say you and maybe Jax have, being guys that didn't get drafted and there was a lot of uncertainty after, and then you do finally get that opportunity? How do you just not take that for granted?
Yeah, I think that was a huge thing for me, really, for that 2 week period, not knowing if I was going to play again. I think it put baseball in a different perspective for me. I think I had already at that point in my career, like I said, I wasn't stressing the result factor so much, but obviously I still cared and loved baseball, and wanted to perform well, like I still do, but just in a different perspective when the game is kind of taken away from you, and you realize that I still have this desire and passion to work at this, and there was no guarantee that I was ever going to get it. And so when I did get that back, I think, every day now that I'm showing up here, whether it's a good day or a bad day on the mound, at least it's a day on the mound. And I think that's a thing for me that, you never know when your time is going to end in this sport. And there's so many people, who love this game and would kill to play it another time. And I think that's how most athletes feel whenever they're done. And unfortunately, most people don't get to decide that. And so, the fact that I'm able to come out here and do this every day and do it as a job, and I'm still finding joy, and I still have a passion for it, is something that I'm super grateful for every day, when I'm out on the field.
Yeah, I think it's so cool. One, just all of the work that you have put in and how you just didn't give up. I mean, you very easily could have just said, all right, we're done and, gone to medical school, which also would have been unbelievable and super cool and extremely impactful. But you continued to grind. And even when there was times that you had no clue what was going on, you still said, I'm going to just grind and I know that I can get somewhere with baseball. What has surprised you the most with professional baseball?
Yeah, I would say the ability of guys to like pass on their knowledge. It's different, especially from college, because you have guys. I mean, in college you have guys who are 18 to 22, right? A lot of guys are, I mean, older and younger in some cases, but for the majority, that's the typical age range. And for the most part, guys have experienced a similar thing. You might be a veteran in the program and you might be new, but at least guys kind of know what to expect, and it's a similar season. In pro baseball, I've had teammates in the last year who have been 17 and who have been 31. And so that 14-year age range, there's a lot of things that you can gain and learn from that. And so whether it's a guy who's here on rehab from the pros or from high up in the minors, or it's a guy, we just had a kid come in for a few days from our FCL team who's 17 and doesn't know how to say his name in English. But you can learn a lot of different things from each type of player, and guys are really willing to pass on knowledge. And you have guys coming from different organizations and different experiences, getting signed and cut and traded, and so I really just try to absorb everything and the experiences of all these guys. It's been really, I think, beneficial to my development, just as a human being, hearing all these guys' stories, but then also as a pitcher. You're getting advice on pitch grips and pitching mentality and stuff like that you maybe haven't been exposed to yet, and you can kind of take bits and pieces and feel what works and what doesn't. You also kind of get a wider opportunity to mess around and play with things. In a college season, you have 56 games. Every game is high stakes. Like, you are playing to win every single game, and I love that. I love playing to win. But when you're trying to really develop yourself as a baseball player, those probably aren't the best environments and situations for that. Sometimes the need to go win a game takes precedent over developing this player's off-speed pitch for the day. And in pro baseball, you can really go out there and tinker with things and know that, okay, I have 140 games or 162 at the big league level to kind of figure this thing out, and multiple years ahead of my career to kind of do this and find out what works. And so I think taking in things from a lot of different guys and applying that to your own self as a person and a player, and then also just having kind of some more freedoms to go out there and experiment on the mound, are some of the things that I've been surprised about in pro baseball.
You've always seemed to have great velocity and a solid breaking ball. And in college, at times, tell me if I'm wrong, you could be facing a 7, 8, 9 guy in an opposing lineup, and just your velo alone could beat them. Once you get to pro ball, those 7, 8, 9 hitters in the opposing lineup were guys that were hitting third and fourth in college baseball. And so everyone is, 10 times better. How have you learn to adjust your pitching, or what are some things you've had to adjust going from college baseball where maybe just your velocity could get you outs to, and pro ball where you need to kind of dive a little deeper to get those outs? How has that changed for you?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I would probably say in pro baseball, really pitching a guy by the book in most cases doesn't really exist. Like you said, in professional baseball now, at really any level, whether it's low A baseball or in the majors, seeing 100 miles an hour from multiple guys a week is not out of the question. And so, you know, you like to think you throw hard as a pitcher throwing mid 90s, but really, that's just kind of every day to these hitters these days. And so you really have to challenge yourself and the batter when you go up to face a guy. And you can't just rely on one pitch or, two pitches to make it through a lineup, much less one at bat. And so really kind of understanding what's working for you that day. I mean, pitching, it's so variable that, like, really on that day you can have a better feel for an off-speed pitch versus the heater, or maybe it's your splitter today that feels better than the slider. Even though maybe your slider you feel like is your better pitch today, the splitter is playing better, and so let's be confident with that. attack guys with that. There's really no room to kind of second guess yourself and go back to what's comfortable, because that's what's going to get you in trouble at the end of the day. Tripling up on pitches, quadrupling up on pitches, if they're working well, is something that I've seen guys do and I've done myself this year that, like, really in college or in high school, I would never really do. Just kind of goes against what you think like normal pitching is. But if you have control of that pitch and you're executing it that day, and in that at bat, then like that's what you go and do. And so I think it's been interesting to kind of find what works, and it changes every day, which I think is the good part about being a reliever, because I'm up there, really tinkering every single day on what I feel confident in and what I want to improve. And so I'm able to do that on the mound, which is nice.
I want to hear from you, a guy who has pitched in many different roles throughout your entire career. You've been a starter at times, you've been a long relief guy, you've been a closer. How do all those roles differentiate, and how do you kind of handle those physically and mentally?
Yeah, so I think, the biggest difference for me was probably going from, my first couple years. I mean, in high school, obviously starting pitcher and then transitioning into a bullpen role. But then even as a junior, the first half of the season, I think I made like 8 or 10 starts. And then the back half of the season, the rest of my career till now, coming out of the bullpen, kind of what is the different approach to each one. And when I was a starter, obviously you have the full week to prepare. For me, that looked like a pretty scheduled and prescribed routine on each and every day, from throwing to weight room and stuff like that. I knew what I was doing. I knew I had 2 long toss days. I knew I had a high intensity day on my bullpen day that was going to be 3 days out from my start. I knew in the weight room the day before I wasn't doing anything. On my bullpen day, I was going heavy legs. The day after I pitched, I was back in the weight room going heavy again with like a mixed hybrid day in the middle. All that kind of gets wiped away when you're coming out of the bullpen. And so you kind of have to learn how to adjust. You have to, your catch play looks a little bit different. You can't be going long toss every day and ripping pull downs on the way in when you don't know if you're getting the call that day. And so it's really was kind of a fluid process for me to find out what that looks like for me. And I think that's one of the things that I love about coming out of the bullpen, honestly, is that um, I'm able to just really dial it in when the game is happening. And I think that was a big thing for me that I struggle with as a starter, is there was so much time before and in between starts that I would just kind of get in my head and, kind of live there instead of living on the mound when I was competing. And it just took me out of the competitive spirit. And coming out of the bullpen, knowing that, all right, when the game's on, at any minute of this game, I could get a phone call from the dugout, knowing that I'm in. It forced me to be really engaged with the game mentally, but then also, physically, I wasn't, kind of waiting around to pitch. I was locked into the game. And if it was me that day, then it was go time. And I was really just able to kind of step back and say, hey, we're here. Let's go compete now, in terms of like trying to prepare my way to being successful on the day that it's happening. I was just waiting for.
Yeah, I feel like it could almost be easier at times when you have no clue when you're going in. So you always just have to stay locked in. And there's plenty of guys that are starters, and you just know for the however many days leading up to that start is they're already in their head thinking so much about it, about what's going to happen. Do I need to work on this pitch a little bit more, whatever it may be. But when you're a reliever, you just have to go out there and you just have to be in a dog on the mound, because you're going in a situation where you might have a lead, or you need to keep the score where it is to keep your team in it. And there's so much that goes into it. What is your mentality?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing, and I think I've really found this in the last half of my junior year in Nebraska, was almost just taking like a football attitude to the mound. When I would try to be up on the mound, thinking too much, and trying to plan my way and really, pitch my way to success while I was playing the game, it never really worked well for me. And when I'm just going after the hitter and with full conviction and trusting what I am thinking and going with my instinct, and not really worrying about what happens afterwards, that's when I found that I have the most success. I've thought of it kind of like when my head's over the rubber, that's not a good spot for me to be in. But when my head's over the plate and focused on the hitter and focused on the catcher's glove, and that's the only thing I'm thinking about, I'm not really thinking about what I'm doing. that's when I've seen myself thrive. And so just really trying to that on to the force the spotlight onto the competition that's happening and not me as a pitcher in that moment, and just make it a competitive battle like sports are supposed to be.
What does confidence mean to you?
I think confidence for me is being truly convicted in what you're doing and having no regrets about it. I think a lot of times people can have their confidence shaken because of results that happen. And I think if you are truly confident, then you know the process that you're doing, you're convicted in it, you believe in it. And regardless of the results, that's not going to change what you think about yourself and about your own confident ability, right? Like if you're confident in yourself, you know that what you did was right, and you wouldn't change it, even though if you might want to change the outcome, you're not always in control of that, especially in baseball. And so I think being convicted and believing in what you're doing and not changing the outcome is true confidence.
I absolutely love that answer. And now I'm thinking back to my time at Fullerton and at Portland. And just as a hitter, we would always be taking ground balls or we would have catch play or whatever it may be. And I swear for like 2 hours, it felt like the pitchers were all in the bullpen or all doing their throwing. And it just took absolutely forever. But there's so much that goes into it. Can you dive into what goes into a pregame routine or a practice routine for a really good pitcher, and then what makes a really good pitcher?
Yeah, I think the routine, kind of like you said, is something that you kind of get used to once you're in it. But really looking from the outside, it is kind of a lot, and it makes sense. It should be a lot. Guys are out here, they're professional athletes. They're trying to prepare themselves in the best way possible. That really takes a daily effort. And so, like just a brief rundown of like kind of what it looks like for us as pitchers on the mound. If we have a 6:30 o'clock game, most guys are rolling into the clubhouse at about 1:30. And even then you're 5 hours out before first pitch. And we typically throw at 3:30, on any given day in and around there. And so basically from 1 to 3:30, guys are prepping their bodies to go out and have really, for pitchers, the most important 30 minutes of the day, except for your time on the mound, which is your catch play. That's the one thing that's guaranteed to you about every single day if you want to do it as a pitcher. And that's where you create your habits. And so a lot of guys, and myself included, you're rolling out for 20 to 30 minutes, dynamic and static stretching, getting treatment from the trainer if you're sore from the day before, or just treatment to prepare yourself to go out for catch play. That usually takes about an hour to an hour and a half. And then you go out and play catch, which, like I said, is really your time of the day. It's the only thing that you're guaranteed as an arm on that day, especially out of the pen. And so we want to create good habits in our catch play, and I think that's where a lot of guys really lock in, especially in the pregame area. And so, whatever your catch play looks like for that day, for me, it's typically anywhere from 90 to 150 feet. When I come back in to 60, spinning a few breaking balls, usually 2 to 3 times a week. Apart from my game mound and in my game innings, I'm touching the mound in the bullpen, feeling out pitches. Pitching on a slope is a lot different than pitching on a flat ground, and so I think it's important to familiarize yourself with that as a pitcher and know what your pitches look like off the mound versus on a flat ground, because it really it does change the way the ball comes out of your hand. And so getting up on the mound, post throw, guys will go through what they need to do. Typically, that looks like arm care recovery, and then one of three things. You're either sprinting, conditioning, or lifting for that day. There's usually a designation from our strength coach here on which one of those things you're doing, but you have, full autonomy over that if you want to. If you prefer to lift, have a primer lift before you're hot instead of sprint, you have that option. What you do for conditioning looks different if you're more of a bike guy or if you're a pole guy. Really it's up to you, like we said, with control over your career. And so once that's done, you've already put in about 3 hours of work. And then for pitchers, then you go back out and you're just ready to go for the game. Like we said, cleats are on every game and tied tight and ready to go into the game. And so that's kind of what the daily routine is to kind of get yourself in the best position to win. And then, like we said, that's prepares you to be the best pitcher you can be. I think the second question was what makes a good pitcher. And I think there's a lot of things that go into it. I think knowing who you are and how you best perform and get guys out and knowing that about yourself is a really big thing. I think today a lot of guys are really chasing velocity, which you have to. That's part of the game now, but that's not all that pitching is. You can look at any level and see guys have tons of success. I think Kyle Freeland for the Rockies just had a complete game, first career complete game the other day. He's a left-handed guy throwing 91-mile-an-hour sinkers in Colorado where the ball flies out of there. And so that guy has to find a different way to be effective. He's still a very good pitcher. Just because he doesn't throw 100 doesn't mean he's not a really good arm. And so I think, like we talked about, being confident in yourself, knowing who you are as a pitcher, and then at the end of the day, it's just execution. There's a lot of guys, execution, that means striking guys out because that's how you get guys out. Um, and there's the guys that means getting early swings and getting contact outs. And so really, if you're able to get ahead of hitters and kind of dictate the at bat instead of falling behind and having to give in to what the hitter needs, or you find yourself having to even the count or anything like that. That's when you start to get in trouble on the mound. When you can really bring it to the hitter and know what you're about, that's what being a good pitcher is.
That all was so perfectly articulated. You did a great job of just kind of explaining how much more goes into being a professional pitcher than probably the average person thinks. I mean, because as a fan, when you show up to the game, you'll still see maybe some guys that are out there playing catch, messing with their grips a little bit, but you don't understand that they have been there for 5 hours before, and
Yeah.
there's so much more that goes into it. And so, as awesome it is to continue to play baseball, it may seem easy, like you got this easy life and everything is nice because you're a professional athlete, but there is so much more that goes into it. And I feel like you just spoke that so well. And then when it comes down to being a great pitcher, it's execution, it's confidence, and then the routine. There's so much that makes, you who you are, and the success that you get on the field all comes from that. I end every conversation with the same question. If you could go back and give your younger self just one piece of advice regarding the mental side of the game, let's say freshman at Nebraska Drew, what would that advice be?
I would tell myself to trust who you are. There's no need to reinvent who you are as a pitcher or as an athlete, especially. I think for me, that's something that I struggle with, especially as a freshman. I thought that, coming into this new level, I had to change a lot of different things and become that much better and do X, Y, and Z to get there. And it really kind of just locked me into the mindset of forcing things and having to do things for results. And like not being able to see that on the field was where it struggled. And now I have a disconnect with my effort and my results. And I feel like I'm trying so hard and nothing's happening. And so then now that because I'm valuing the results so much, because I'm putting this impotence on, like, I have to succeed because I have to work hard, that changes the relationship that I want to have with my effort. I want it to be, I love this game so much and I'm so passionate about being the best version of myself that I'm going to work hard. And if the guy hits a dribbler down the line for a double, or if he hits a home run off me, that's awesome because I know that I worked hard and I did it because I love this game, and there's no need to change who you are as a athlete or as a person to try and find success. Just work hard because you love something, and whatever happens after that, you can have pride in knowing that you did your best in that area.
100%. I mean, I'd rather be successful being who I am than being who I'm not. And I think that's perfectly said, Drew. I appreciate you. This was an unbelievable episode, and I'm so excited to see you and all that you do the rest of the way.
Yeah, thanks, Tristan. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you again to Drew for sharing his journey and insight into the mental side of the game. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with someone who would find it valuable. Thanks for tuning in and keep moving forward. Until next time.